Now the latest ITV News in London with Duncan Golestani.
Tonight, a vicious attack on a Jewish man in North London. The victim has told ITV News London the blow was so brutal he didn't even have time to realise he'd been attacked.
I went into deep shock, but I replayed in my mind what I was told happened, as if I saw it, and that, it was quite nightmarish.
Also on the programme, it was just announced the Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts has died at the age of 80. Plus, arrests made on day 2 of Extinction Rebellion's protests across the capital and... bringing some soul to Surrey, the Grammy Award-winning group Shalamar on their trip from Hollywood to Esher. Good evening. It was an assault so out of the blue, the victim didn't even realise he'd been attacked. A 64-year-old Jewish man was walking to synagogue in Stamford Hill when he was punched unconscious. He believed he'd simply collapsed until he was told he'd been the victim of a hate crime. Today, he spoke to ITV News London about the horrific attack as other Jewish people in the area accused the police of not taking anti-Semitism seriously enough. Sam Holder has this report and a warning it does contain footage of the attack.
The footage is hard to believe. A man walks up to an Orthodox Jewish grandfather and punches him so hard in the face he's knocked out and breaks his ankle. It's so sudden, so violent, the man didn't realise he'd even been punched. He thought he'd had a blackout. It was only when his grandson checked the local synagogue's CCTV that he realised what had happened. He doesn't want to show his identity because the attacker still hasn't been caught.
I went into deep shock, terrible pain. For the first 2 nights after I heard there was an attack, although I didn't see the footage, I was advised not to, but I replayed in my mind what I was told happened, as if I saw it, and that, it was quite nightmarish.
Police believe this man is responsible for a series of likely anti-Semitic attacks. 4 Jewish victims in Stamford Hill hit at random, including, here, a 14-year-old boy. Despite this clear photo, which appears to show him in either South Asian or Islamic clothing, he still hasn't been caught. The man hasn't been arrested. Should Jewish people in the area feel confident walking around the streets?
Yes, I would say go about your daily lives. This is a relatively isolated incident. We are very keen to identify who this person is, as I've said already.
But he could be anywhere.
But he could be anywhere. We urge the public, if you know who this person is, to call us.
Local Jewish leaders say the attack is symptomatic of a much wider problem with anti-Semitism. Those, like Shomrim, a volunteer security force, are calling for more police action.
The police need more resources. More money needs to be directed to help the police, the frontline police service, deal with these type of incidents.
How often are you seeing incidents like this?
Every day.
That's the extent of the anti-Semitism at the moment?
Yep.
It's not just physical attacks, it includes these teenagers climbing on and throwing rocks at a synagogue and racist graffiti. This year has seen a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism across London. Many in the community feel unsafe. Now there is the fear of someone indiscriminately attacking Jewish people who hasn't been caught.
Sam, we've been here before, haven't we, talking about this rise in anti-Semitic attacks?
Yeah, Duncan, it was just earlier this month I was reporting on that big rise in anti-Semitism, and then again today I'm speaking to another Jewish victim of a completely random, violent crime. In the first 6 months of this year, there was a 51% increase in the number of anti-Semitic attacks compared to last year. And I spoke to Mark Gardner from the Community Security Trust, which helps protect Jewish communities, about why that was happening.
But these racist attacks against Jews, they do happen. We had a very bad time of it in May when there was a war in the Middle East, and unfortunately it looks like the trend is continuing. Still, a lot of anti-Semitic attacks, racist attacks against Jews.
It's important to say the police are taking this really seriously. They've dedicated teams to it. They say that they believe the man isn't from Hackney or Stamford Hill. Another thing to note is that local mosques in the area have come out to condemn this completely, offer their support to the Jewish community and urge anyone who might have any information about who this attacker is to hand him over.
Sam, thank you. Police have made several arrests today after forcibly moving climate change activists from a protest in Whitehall. It was the second day of action by Extinction Rebellion in central London. Tonight, the group have brought traffic to a standstill again in Cambridge Circus in the West End. Our political correspondent Simon Harris will be there in a moment, but first, his report on the day's events.
Day 2 of Extinction Rebellion's latest attempt to disrupt London, and Whitehall was brought to a standstill. Activists parked themselves in the road outside the Treasury, forcing traffic to be diverted. Some chose to chain themselves together, so-called lock-ons.
There's pipes inside here, and we've got chains around our wrists, and there's a rod in the middle, and we're locked on here.
How long will you stay?
As long as it takes.
It's cold. You can't move your wrist or anything in there. It's uncomfortable.
How will the police get you out?
I have no idea.
But they will.
Yeah.
Climate activists from Wales took the lead on this protest. Paul was spurred into action by flooding at his home, but he wasn't expecting to be here for long.
It's possible that they'll want us gone in the next couple of hours. Yes, we'll play it as it comes, but we're prepared to stay here indefinitely. We haven't got a fixed end time.
To begin with, police appeared to be taking a relaxed approach to the disruption.
The protesters have been outside the Treasury for almost 3 hours now, and so far the police have made no attempt to move them. Whitehall, meanwhile, is closed to traffic.
But then, just after 1 o'clock, police officers were seen giving instructions to the activists in the road.
If we didn't move by 1:30, then we would be occupying this road illegally.
We're allowed to go to Parliament Square, where we're allowed to be non-disruptively protest. So, of course, it's not protest if it's not disruptive.
Shortly afterwards, the speakers on a police van began to broadcast a message.
You have until 1:30, so to cease causing an unlawful obstruction. If you do not leave the road, you will be arrested.
And that was the beginning of the end. As most protesters obeyed the instruction, specialist officers moved in with cutting tools to release the rest. But they weren't free. One by one, they were carried to police vans to be driven away.
Everyone will realise.
So look, we're ready to go. I appreciate you want to have your say, but we've got other people in the van as well. We need to get in the cage and go, please.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Most of those who defied the police deadline to move before 1:30 were arrested. The operation to end the protest was swifter than yesterday's. There, police didn't start making arrests until late in the evening. This afternoon, traffic was again moving along Whitehall.
Simon, how are things looking this evening?
Well, Duncan, there's a big police operation underway here in the West End after the Extinction Rebellion protesters transferred their activities from Whitehall. Cambridge Circus, at the busy junction between Charing Cross Road and Shaftesbury Avenue, has been closed tonight, right at the start of the rush hour. As you can see, there's a white hire van parked in the middle of the junction. On top of it is one protester, another one or two are on the tailgate, and a couple appear to be chained to the chassis, sitting or lying on the floor. Now, this is the second time today, as we've seen, that Extinction Rebellion have managed to close the road. This one's a really busy road at this time of night. As you can imagine, the West End is already packed with people coming out for the night, but traffic has had to be diverted after police set up roadblocks in the surrounding area. Now, we've seen a lot of police activity in the last few minutes. They've made this a sterile area so the protesters can't get anywhere near the van, and crews with cutting gear have gone in to try to remove those protesters attached to it. Meanwhile, the rest of the Extinction Rebellion activists are partying, as you can hear, on Charing Cross Road behind me.
Simon Harris in central London, thank you. 3 people have died and 1 person is in hospital with life-threatening injuries after a crash on the M25 in Essex. The collision involving a lorry, minibus and car happened near Waltham Abbey yesterday evening. 2 drivers have been arrested on suspicion of causing death and serious injury by dangerous driving. The road has now reopened. Police investigating an assault in Camden have released images of 2 men they wish to speak to. A man in his 20s was attacked with a knife at Lockbridge in Camden Market. His injuries were not life-threatening. And 58 Afghan refugees have moved into temporary homes in Surrey. Spelthorne Borough Council have confirmed 10 women, 10 men and 38 children are now in temporary accommodation after completing quarantine. The council praised residents tonight, saying they were extremely grateful for the warm welcome shown to the refugees. Some breaking news this evening, and it's been confirmed the Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts has died. The London musician, who was 80, passed away earlier today in a hospital in the capital. Our reporter Mark McQuillan is here. Mark, very sad news. What more do we know?
Well, we know this news was announced within the last hour, Duncan. Charlie Watts, of course, had a stellar career with the Rolling Stones, spanning nearly 60 years. He was born in London, grew up in Wembley and went on to become, of course, legendary drummer with one of the biggest bands of all time. And it was announced a short time ago that he passed away peacefully at a London hospital earlier today, surrounded by his family. And a statement from his publicist said Charlie was a cherished husband, father and grandfather, and also as a member of the Rolling Stones, one of the greatest drummers of his generation. Now, we know that Charlie Watts has had some health issues in the past. In 2004, he was treated for throat cancer at London's Royal Marsden Hospital and was given the all clear following a 4-month battle with the illness. Earlier this month, it was announced that he was going to miss the band's forthcoming US tour, that after he recovered from an unspecified medical procedure. So just to recap that sad news announced within the last hour, Charlie Watts, legendary drummer with the Rolling Stones, has died at the age of 80. No doubt plenty of tributes will be paid to him tonight.
I think they'll be coming, yeah. Thank you very much, Mark. Next, the government is being urged to offer greater protection to shop workers in London as a new law to protect them from violence, threats and abuse comes into force in Scotland today. 92% of retail staff say they have experienced verbal abuse during the pandemic, and more than 1 in 10 were assaulted. The Union for Retail Workers, USDOR, now wants the groundbreaking legislation to be extended across the capital and the rest of the UK, as Katie Barnfield reports.
I was sworn at, screamed at, had stuff thrown at me.
I was stabbed by a needle. A shoplifter attempted to headbutt me.
I was pinned to the wall in the toilets.
These are just a few of the stories of abuse that shop workers have experienced just trying to do their jobs.
A customer who was impatient in a queue threw coins at me.
As a supermarket cashier in Ilford, Labo normally loves her work. But during the pandemic, it's been different. Now she's often scared about how customers will treat her and her colleagues.
Security guards dealing with wearing masks, social distancing, they were spat at, things thrown at them. The lasting impact is the erosion of people's mental well-being.
There are more than 600,000 people working in retail here in London. That's more than anywhere else in the country. But during the pandemic, huge numbers of them have experienced abuse. In a survey by the union USDOR, 92% of shop workers say they've been verbally abused. 70% say they've been threatened by customers, and 14% say they've been assaulted.
In Scotland, from today, a new law has come into force, making it an offence specifically to abuse retail staff while they're at work. USDOR are now campaigning for the same law to be brought in here.
We've even had members of staff in London that have actually been stabbed and put in hospital, and this just can't go on. We can't carry on having people go to work and have that fear.
So far, attempts to bring in a new law here have been voted down, with the government telling us there are already strong powers to prosecute abusive customers.
You always wonder what could happen today. What's worse than yesterday.
But it's little comfort for workers like Labo who don't feel safe. Katie Barnfield, ITV News.
Still to come on the programme.
Coming up in a bit, I'll have the full forecast. The sun has been shining. Actually, that's a lie. And I'm with these two guys as well, who are...
Koala!
Nothing to do with Australia.
But first, in London 2012, David Weir was one of the superstars of the Paralympics, winning 4 gold medals. In Rio, it all unravelled. Failure to win a medal saw his mental health suffer, and he turned his back on track racing altogether. Now, thanks to COVID, he's back. Tokyo 2020 will be his 6th Games, and he hopes to provide fireworks on the track to match those at the opening ceremony this lunchtime. Martin Stew reports.
A year late, but not a moment too soon for the athletes. Tokyo Paralympics is finally underway. Whilst Paralympic GB paraded inside the stadium, outside protesters angry about rising COVID levels in Japan made their voices heard. London athletes, including Wallington's David Weir, are having to live in strict bubbles.
I'm just privileged and proud that the Japanese government have let us have the Paralympics go ahead.
The Werewolf, as he's affectionately known, has had to adapt his training during lockdown, building a home gym in his garage and using tempo rollers instead of races.
You put your chair on the back wheels and you sort of spin and you have your clock, and I've been doing Zoom calls with my coach.
This is 42-year-old David's 6th Paralympics. He first competed in Atlanta aged 17. But it was in London where his 4 golds made him a household name.
We have been graced by greatness tonight. The Werewolf has made this stadium his own.
Rio didn't go so well.
We're trying to push up again in 4.
No medals and a fallout with his team led him to get help from a counsellor and turn his back on track racing. Then the pandemic kicked in.
The only reason I come back on the track was because of COVID and not having any marathons, so I needed to go and do some sort of racing, and the only opportunity I got was going to Switzerland in May.
David Weir!
That went better than expected, with David clocking up not 1 but 2 PBs. Despite the form though, he's not setting himself any medal targets.
I'm going to put any pressure on myself at this Games. You wouldn't see any able-bodied doing 6 games in a row. You know, I'm just proud of myself to get where I've got to.
One thing he's less pleased about, though, is what he sees as a failure to build on the legacy of London 2012's Paralympic success.
We don't want it to be just a 4-year cycle, and that's what it seems to be like. The numbers of Paralympic sports have gone up. I just don't think the publicity's gone up for us. You know, I don't think you guys and the media and sponsors do enough for us.
We can all cheer on David in the first of his races on Friday. Martin Stew, ITV News.
The British sprinter Zarnell Hughes has broken his silence following his teammate CJ Uja's positive drugs test. In a post on social media, he said athletes need 2 things: a clean sport and to ensure that those finding themselves under the spotlight must have a fair hearing in their case without prejudice. The pair won an Olympic silver medal as part of the 4x100-metre relay team. Uja has been provisionally suspended from competing after testing positive for 2 banned substances, but denies any wrongdoing. If Uja's ban is upheld, all 4 will lose their silver medals, a first in British Olympic sport. The ITV News continues at 6:30. Here's a look ahead now with Chris Shipp.
Coming up, world leaders meet as the situation in Afghanistan becomes ever more dangerous. The Taliban says it doesn't want any more Afghans to leave. We'll have the outcome of the meeting between Britain, America and others. Also ahead, hoping to solve the 12-year mystery of missing Claudia Lawrence, today police begin a fresh search. The McDonald's milkshake shortage, while you'll struggle to get one anywhere in Britain. Plus, let the Games begin. Britain's Paralympians hoping for a medal rush in Tokyo. Those and today's other stories at 6:30.
But first from us, they're one of the best funk and soul bands around, selling more than 25 million records before going their separate ways. That was, of course, Shalamar, the three-piece featuring Howard Hewitt, Jeffrey Daniel and Carolyn Griffey. The band has since reformed, and this weekend they'll be playing the Happy Days Festival at Imber Court in Surrey, alongside some other legendary artists from the 70s, 80s and 90s. And as you can see, I'm delighted to say they're joining me all now. Hello, welcome to you all.
Hello from Hyde Park.
What's up? From Hyde Park. What's up?
First of all, Jeffrey, where are you saying hello from?
I'm in Hyde Park because I was in isolation for 5 days and I'm a free man. I'm free.
So you've gone out sightseeing at the earliest opportunity, yeah?
Oh, and today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And it is your birthday. Happy birthday and happy Freedom Day as well.
And his daughter's birthday.
Oh,
and my
triple
daughter's
celebration.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
Howard.
Howard and Carolyn, then, are you both still doing quarantine?
Howard's not. I am.
Only Carolyn.
I didn't. Only Carolyn had to do quarantine. I didn't have to do quarantine. This is the first time I came here with this much time on my hands before we started working. You know, it was like, it's crazy. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm in and out of my room. I'm walking around and it's like crazy. But usually when I come, usually when we come here, we rest for a day, and then we're into rehearsals and then into the tour. But this time I decided to come and spend a little bit more time before we started working.
At least none of you have an excuse not to be watching ITV News London every day. That's all I can say. Carolyn, how are you doing, and how are you able to get ready for your gigs this weekend if you're holed up in a hotel?
I needed the rest. I just actually made a move from the southern region of America to all the way to Las Vegas. So I'm back on the West Coast. So right after that, I had to gather stuff. You guys, I don't know what I'm wearing, so just pray for me. But I'm here and I'm blessed, and I'm so glad to be here, and all of us here on Jeffrey's birthday too.
We're so glad to have you. So what can fans expect at the weekend?
Oh, you know what? We're coming after all of this COVID business. We're coming with the healing power of feel-good music.
And the thing is, your gigs, everyone gets up and starts partying. I mean, you can't help but not to with your music.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It's all about feel good music. For even the new stuff is feel good music. Real quick before we get any further, I just want to send out my condolences to Charlie Watts' family. I just heard about that. That was sad to hear that. Sad to hear.
That was going to be one of my questions, actually, Howard. You must have been a big fan of the Stones. Do you have any memories of interacting with the group?
Well, I never met him. I met
Mick
one
Jagger?
member one time, long to Mick Jagger, right? Wow. I met Mick Jagger a long time ago along with Prince, but I never seen. That was one of my bucket list things that I wanted to do. I wanted to see the group, but the whole group. But I guess that won't happen. But it was. I was sad to hear that just about a half an hour ago, actually.
Yeah, always sad. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
We send our condolences, but at the same time, we want to congratulate them because they are the longest running rock group in history. That is amazing. They're the longest running rock group in history.
Yeah, and those markers are well worth celebrating. Wonderful to have you all in London. Enjoy your walk in Hyde Park, Jeffrey, and I hope you get out of quarantine soon, Carolyn. Thank you so much, and good luck with the gig in Esher this weekend.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sally, you've got more music news, haven't you?
Yes, well, they're talking about festivals. I went to see another band today who are playing a festival called Feastival. Clever name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whenever I go and meet bands, they never bring their instruments, and I have no idea why. I'm terrified because they don't want me to join it. But anyway, the band I went to meet today are up and coming. Obviously, lockdown was a bit of a shame for them, but they are back into business, back playing gigs. I went to find out all about them and their rather interesting name. Let's take a little look and listen.
But tell me at what cost I'll find the ticket to ride. I've been waiting for the perfect time.
Their sound is fun and full of harmonies, but while their music is a true easy listen, the name of this London band, Koala, and its spelling, requires a little explaining.
First of all, lads, tell me, where are you from in London?
We are from North London.
North London.
The greatest of all the bits of London.
Kentish Town, Tufnell Park.
Yeah.
So, Koala just makes me think of Australia. Where did the name come from?
We thought it might help us break Australia, but it hasn't happened.
I think it was our first show.
First ever gig, yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's a great band name. Let's just run with that. Koala spelt wrong. And I went, what do you mean spelt wrong?
Jim is severely dyslexic.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Jim, that's lovely.
Yeah. So
well, not lovely, but you know, the story behind it's good.
So, yeah.
It came from my inability to spell.
Although lockdown was a blow, they haven't let it hold them back. But it's not just the band's name that's caught my attention, it's the title of their new track, too.
Now, your latest track, Ticket to Ride, bold name, guys.
Yeah.
Did you think about the Beatles when you went with that one?
Sorry, who are the Beatles? No, yeah, it's we wrote that. I remember when we wrote it, we sat down and we were like, we can't call it that. We just kept singing it in the main.
Yeah, my dad's still proper mad at it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you've done this. Yeah.
Much like the Beatles, their catchy tune has been very popular in their post-pandemic gigs.
How's it going down in the 3 gigs you've now played since the pandemic?
One of those 3 gigs, we had our first mosh pit for that song.
There were 3 mosh pits at the same time.
No, how did that feel?
Very, very surreal. We don't normally get much of that at our shows.
He plays acoustic guitar.
I play acoustic. I remember kind of like looking over at the security, being like, is this okay? Should we let this, does this carry on? Is this normal? Oh, this is normal. Okay.
As well as playing a festival this weekend, they hope to fulfil a local dream this Christmas when they play Kentish Town Forum, a post-pandemic party it's sure to be.
I do love a band name with a story.
Yes, and don't forget, if you look them up, spell it the other way, otherwise you'll end up with a little grey-brown bear somewhere.
Can't promise to. OK, is it too early to start asking about bank holiday weather?
No, it's not, because we've got quite a settled picture. We've got high pressure over us. I'll talk about this in a second. And so things are staying nice and settled. And it does look like Saturday's a little bit uncertain at the moment, but it does look like most of the bank holiday will be pretty nice. Fingers crossed. Right, here's the full forecast. Not the half forecast, the full forecast.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Well, before we talk about any blue sky, let's look at some of the nighttime skies last night. Look at that beautiful moon there, taken by Alan. Thank you for that. And hopefully, Barbara, the mud on your walk will all dry up soon, because the weather is looking quite dry over the next few days. We've got a bit of cloud around, but still some sunny spells poking through, and no sign of any heat wave, but it is quite warm in the sunshine. And the reason for the settled weather, of course, is the high pressure that's staying over us. This cold front sinking south on Thursday doesn't look like it'll be too bothersome now, maybe a bit cloudier perhaps in the morning. There's a feature on Saturday that we're just keeping an eye on, but for the most part of the weekend things are staying quite fine and quite dry. We'll just keep an eye on Saturday. So back to tonight, again with some clear skies this evening. You might catch another photo of the moon, Alan. And then as we go through to tomorrow morning, getting a little bit chilly out in the countryside. We got down to a 10 in Wisley last night. Could get down to single figures in the countryside, a little bit warm in the towns and cities. And then tomorrow morning, we sort of do it again. It does look like there might be a bit more cloud around first thing. Some of that breaking up to let a bit of sunshine through tomorrow. But as we head through into the afternoon, some of that cloud will start to thicken up again. That said, the temperature's still getting up into the low 20s. And then for the latter part of the afternoon, you can see that's where the cloud really starts to thicken a bit. But then it does start to break up again as we head through to the latter part of the evening. Now into Thursday, we will get some cloud, but it does look like there'll be some sunshine heading our way at times as well. Friday's not too bad. Saturday, we're keeping an eye on that. A little bit mixed at the moment. And then into Sunday and Monday, high pressure staying in place and the fine weather hanging on as well. That's it for now. I'll see you later on. Cheerio.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Thank you, Sally. And that is it. I'll be back with the latest after news at 10. Coming up, Chris Shipp with the ITV Evening News. But from me and the rest of the London team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.